Hello there, 7th graders of Concord Junior High. All right, so today we are going to look at properties of operations. Now, some of these could be review for you, and then some of them could be new. Okay, so make sure you have your notebook out to take your notes, and then follow along throughout the lesson. Now, it's a video, so you can pause it whenever you need to. If you need to review back in your textbook, Chapter 5, Lesson 3, you can find this in your textbook as well. So today's objective is that you will identify and use mathematical properties to simplify algebraic expressions. Okay, things that we already know that we did this week was write and evaluate expressions. We're given at least one variable with one or more operations. Then we can evaluate when we're given a value for that variable. You replace it, you follow the order of operations, and you get your final answer. That is where you evaluate. Okay, so over here we have some more expressions. We have a property right here that we're going to talk about what we use with that. But why would we need to know this? Because when you get to 8th grade and higher, you're going to have more complex and difficult equations. So what we are learning this year is helping you be prepared and make it easier for you when you get up to higher grades. Okay, so this is where our notes are going to start in. These are the 4 properties that we are going to focus on today. Now, these are not the only properties. We have another one that we will talk about next week as well. All right, so if you have the note version to print out, feel free to print that out at home. Or go ahead and start filling in at your notes that you know these 4 properties you are going to discuss in this order. Okay, this is Unit 2, part of our expressions unit, and it's our second lesson on page 21 of our properties of operations foldable. All right, so here goes with our first one. Okay, you can add or multiply numbers in any order. This is our commutative property. We know it's commutative. I kind of think of it like I'm riding a bus back and forth. Either way, if I'm going back and forth, I'm getting from point A to point B. Same thing. If you notice, you have 6 plus 3 equals 3 plus 6. It's the same thing. They both get you to the answer 9. Same thing with 8 times 3 and 3 times 8. They both equal 24. It doesn't matter the order. Now, this is one of those things you can only do it with addition or multiplication. Okay, I challenge you to find and come up with your own example of an addition commutative property and a multiplication commutative property. All right, next is our associative property. When you add or multiply, their grouping does not matter. So this is where you're going to see parentheses come into play. Okay, if I was to add my 2 and 3 first to get my 5, 5 plus 4 still equals 9. Same thing if I was to flip my grouping. I'm like, well, I want to group 3 and 4. That's 7. And I'm going to add my 2. That's still 9. And once again, you can do this with either multiplication or addition. Okay. It's one of those things, it really helps, especially with multiplication, to do it as mental math. So like here, instead of taking 3 times 2 for 6 times 5, I know 2 times 5 is 10. That's one of our simpler multiplications. So you group those differently so that you can make your work easier. Okay, I challenge you to come up with your own example for addition and multiplication associative property. All right, we're going to add a number added to 0 or multiplied by 1 is equal to the same number. This is an identity property. Okay? And it's like, think of looking in the mirror. If this 15 was looking in a mirror and say the mirror 0, it's going to see itself, right? Same thing if you're multiplying by 1. This 8 sees itself when it looks at that 1, So that's what our answer is. Okay. Challenge you to come up with your own solution to this as well. Come up with your own examples for addition and multiplication identity properties. All right. Now we have the zero of multiplication property. Any number multiplied by zero is zero. That's one of the things you've learned when you first started multiplication. Okay? And it's actually a property. It's one of the things, if we saw this in a grouping, that's something that would help us make our mental math easier. Okay, so come up with another number you can multiply with zero and still get zero. And then we're going to do a little bit of showing how to identify. So we have different ones up here. We have commutative, associative, identity, zero, and then addition or multiplication, because you kind of put them with where they go. So we have a total of 10 that we are going to match. All right, so if you need to number your examples 1 through 10, copy down the problems, and then we're going to identify. So the first one we already have done. This is associative, and I know it's associative because it took parentheses and grouped them differently. Then it's multiplication because there are dots for our multiplication symbols. Okay, so let's look at number 2. 8 plus 3 equals 3 plus 8. That came from our notes. Remember? Well, we know it's addition, so we can drag one of these addition signs. And then what is that with? Well, commutative property, because it's a different order that they actually go in. Okay. What about 3? N times 1 equals n. Well, there's multiplication, so we already know what operation we're using there. And then which is it going to be? Commutative, associative, identity, zero. Well, did I get zero for our answer? Nope, so it can't be that one. Is there parentheses? Nope, so it can't be that one. Commutative or identity. Well, it got the same number it started with, so we're going to go with identity of multiplication. All right, 4, x times y equals y times x. There's no numbers. We don't have any coefficients or constants in this. But if you look, it is a multiplication problem. Okay, remember this is multiplication if they're right next to each other. Okay, what do we notice? Well, I have x, y, and a yx. All I did was change the order. So that right there is our commutative property. All right, number 5, x plus y in parentheses. So you want the sum of x and y plus z equals x plus the sum of y and z. So it's addition. But what do we notice? There's parentheses. And we have 1 that goes with parentheses. All right, let's look at 6. 0 plus 23 equals 23. Well, we know the operation is addition. Okay, remember zeros get us what? Zeros. So it can't be this just because there's a 0 in it. Okay, we have to go with identity because we get 23 as our solution. All right, if you need to pause this and catch up, feel free to. All right, 3 times n times 0. So the product of 3 and n times 0 equals 0. The multiplication, and we got an answer of 0. So that's how we know anything times 0 equals 0. All right, 8. We have the product of m and n times r equals r times the product of m and n. So there is parentheses, okay? But if you notice inside the parentheses, did they change anything? No, it's the same numbers. What they changed was where the r is going. We know we're going to do multiplication. Remember, if you change the order or the direction, you're changing the way that you commute. So that is your commutative property. 9, I have 1 times 3a equals 3a. Well, that is a multiplication problem. And because we got the same, we know it's an identity. All right, 10, last one here. X times y, the product of x and y times z equals x times the product of y and z. So this one, unlike 8, they did change what's inside the parentheses. So that's how we know it is associative. Okay, they associated at the lunch table with different people. It's kind of another little like, hey, what does associative mean? Who are you associating with? Who are you spending your time with? Who are you hanging out with? So same thing. This Y now decided it's going to hang out with that Z. If you need to pause this to finish it up, go right ahead. Screen. I'm going to change it so you can see it better. Okay, this is where most students struggle with. We need to justify. And when we justify, we're going to use the properties. Okay, we're going to try to break it down so we can do this mentally. Okay, so my first step is that I actually am going to change what is associated together. So I want this 25 to actually get closer to this 4. So I'm going to use commutative property. That's my justification. Right? I can't just move a number all crazy without giving it a justification. Okay? So I'm changing the order inside the parentheses. Then I'm going to change which two numbers are grouped together. Okay? If I know I have 4 quarters, I know that's $1. Okay? Which really is 100. Now I know easily in my head I can take 100 times 12 to get my 1200. And then simplify is what we do for our evaluation to get to our solution. Okay, that is what it means by to justify each step, which you're going to have one on your homework that you're going to need to do. Okay, the problem 2, okay, we have, once again, numbers that are grouped. Do you see anything that we could probably get together to make it easier to make this mental math? Okay, so let's go through and see what we can do. I'm going to change my order because I really want this 89 with this 1. I really don't want to have to add this 15 and 89 together. So once again, I'm going to use the commutative property. And then I'm going to group my 89 and my 1 together because then I know that's 90. So I'm using associative property. Then I'm going to add my 90 and 15 to get 105. And my justification for that third step is simplify. All right. Those are 2 different ways to show that you can justify your answers. Okay, so let's look at this one. D times 5. I don't know the value of D. They haven't told me yet. So I need to actually switch it up with commutative property so that I can group and associate 40 and 5 together. My justification then is associative property. Now I can take 40 times 5 to get 200D. So this means 200 times the value of D. It's still simplified, even though I have a variable. If they haven't given me the number to replace what D's value is, then we just leave it as it is. All right, same thing with 4. Normally you want to get all of your constants here together. So we want to group it. So this is 44 is actually closer to the 19 with associative property. Remember, you can do, not associative, commutative property. You can use commutative property on addition and multiplication because their order does not matter. And then associative property, I'm going to associate these to make it easier. I'm going to just take 40 plus 16 to get whatever P plus 60 is my simplification. Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and go down to the next section. Okay, so now we are going to do 3 problems together, showing how we can justify with what we want to do. Okay, so I'm going to use the text box to make it easier. All right, so the first thing I notice is I have two numbers out here that I can actually put together differently. We're going to put it as 8. Use the little star for my multiplication symbol, and 2. And then put our y on the outside. My justification for this one is the associative property. Okay. Now we can go in and actually take our 8 times 2, which is 16, and then we keep our y. We don't know what y is. And that means our only step was that we simplified. We are good there. Okay. Look at number 6. We actually have where we're going to start next week. We're going to talk more about combining like terms. But before I can do that, I need to get this 5 closer to this 2x. So I'm first going to rearrange it to be 2x plus my 5x plus 4. Okay. For that, I use the commutative property. I just abbreviated that a little bit. Next, then I'm going to switch and put my 2x plus my 5x inside the parentheses, and then have my adding 4 on the outside. That's our associative property. Now I'm going to go ahead and put these together. Now, think of it as food. Like I say, you guys always do better if it's something tangible that I'm talking about. If you have 2 apples on the table and 5 apples on your kitchen counter, how many apples do you have altogether? 7, right? This is really a 7x plus 4. My justification is I simplified. Leave that easy. All right, let's look at our last one. Here we have the product of 2d times 3. So I'm actually going to start with associative property. I'm going to put that one, take my 2 and multiply it with my 3. So I'm going to change what is grouped together. That's how we know we can say this is our associative property. And I'm actually going to multiply. I'm going to take my 2 times my 3 for 6. And I don't know what d is, so it just stays put. And that means now we have simplified. Okay, so if you need to, pause this, catch up with it, and put it in your notes. Okay, these are good examples that are going to help you with the homework, which is on our next page. So let's look at what your homework assignment is. Okay, so here we have, first you're going to identify what property is being shown. Then you have 4, 6, 8 problems that you're going to do the same thing as what we just did on the last page. You're going to use the properties to justify how you can put this in simplest form. Okay, so if you have your notes, go back and look at them while you do your homework, or the video if you need to remember how we're going to do this. So I'm going to do a couple with you to make sure that we're all on the same page of how we're going to do this. Let's change my text size. All right, so what property is being shown here? If I take 1 times 4, well, if you look at your notes, we know that this is an identity. But what type of identity? Terminology of multiplication. Shrink it up. Okay, and I know it's multiplication because there's multiplication right there. All right, what about number 2? Okay, I have 6 plus the sum of b and 2 equals the sum of 6 and b plus 2. All right, we would say that this one is our associative property of addition. So you need to fill it up. I'll shrink this down. Okay. Notice I put what operation we're using. Okay. If you're using the associative, commutative, identity, you need to put also what operation is it, because that is part of knowing what type of property it is. Okay, so then you'll finish the remaining parts in this section. And now we have some that we need to do finding. This one. We're going to simplify it the best that we can. Now, if you notice, they all have variables. So you're not going to get just a number value. We're going to get an expression of some sort. Okay, but we need to move it down. So what I'm going to do with this one, first, I want to change what order I am in my parentheses. I'm going to put my x plus 12 instead of just flipping them around. For 9. Can't forget that part. Remember, that one is the commutative property. And this is the plus side for my addition. Obviously, we are working with addition problems. Okay, am I done? Nope. I don't have this in just only one variable, or the variable only being used once, or the number values only being used once. So we need to simplify it even more. So the way I'm going to do that now, I am going to group using my associative property, my number values. And obviously, because we started with addition, we're still going to keep that addition. Next, I'm going to combine. So what is 12 plus 9? 21. And my justification for that one is that I simplified. Okay, let's look. Is there another one that looks really tricky on us? Let's look at 20. Okay, notice they have the 4 on this back side. We can use our commutative property of multiplication, put it in the front. That's our commutative. I misspelled it again. Okay. Now, we've got one more thing we can do. I am going to take and put in parentheses my 4 times my 11, my S now on the outside. Okay, that is our associative property. Now we're going to simplify. I'm going to take my 4 times my 11, which is 44, and keep my S value because we don't know what it is. Okay, so if you notice, all the rest of these in here, you're not going to get a number value. Okay, so our 2, 4, 6 other problems you have, they're going to become expressions, whether it's an addition expression or a multiplication expression. That is how you'll know you're done with them. Okay, and up here, you're just putting which properties. Remember, there's 4 properties. 3 of them can be either addition or multiplication. Okay, if you have any questions, then make sure you check to see what time you're supposed to have a Google Meet with your class. And have a great weekend. Well, tomorrow you'll have one more thing, but you'll have a great weekend after that.